teams that have won consistently and been built for a run of success, meaning just challenging and contending, seriously contending. That's what I hope the Bears do, and the rock-solid foundation of that is drafting.
We're basking in the afterglow of the Eagles' big victory over the Chiefs from Super Bowl Sunday. What were your main takeaways from the Eagles' domination over the Chiefs?
I won. I know people will have to find layers and layers and layers of stuff in our business to talk about, but it was just a bunch of guys lining up on one side and beating the hell out of the other team. And the fact that they did it with old-fashioned power football and a front four on defense that could, rule the day without even blitzing, I thought all that was sort of cool, the football that I grew up understanding and watching and appreciating, and that was it. I mean, it really was. I know that, like I said, there's a million things people can bring up to create talking points, but the Eagles are just bigger, stronger, tougher, and people keep, what was wrong with Patrick Mahomes? Defense. Mm-hmm. Defense was wrong with him.
Yeah.
The same thing that's wrong with any great quarterback when defense gets in his way. Joe Montana had this happen even in his great career when the Giants, broke him and got on the way to their own Super Bowl. And we've seen, this happens. This happens every now and then when great defenses are put together and allowed to play. And the league doesn't really want that. I mean, the NFL doesn't really want that. They want 400-yard passing days, but they didn't get that on Sunday.
You know what, Mike, I looked at the game, and we talked about it forever leading up to the game, that every metric and the eye test and all of it told you that the Eagles were the better overall team. But many of us were like, in a moment like this, a quarterback like Mahomes and a head coach who's been there and done it so many times in Andy Reid may be the X factor that gets you over the hump. What surprised you, if anything, about? I give all the credit to the Eagles and what they did, but were you surprised at some of the ineptitude of the Chiefs on offense, whether it was Mahomes or maybe Andy not making a whole lot of adjustments to what they were seeing?
No, because I think all that stuff is created by great defense. I mean, Tommy, the teams that you played on that had the remnants of great defense, I know it wasn't the 85 season, but the reason that those teams, had made so many good quarterbacks look discombobulated. I mean, I remember a Bears 44-0 victory over the Cowboys in Dallas. And people say, well, Dallas must have been sort of off that year. No, they weren't. They were They won the division. They had Danny White and a multiple-time all-pro quarterback. And the defense, the Bears defense, made them look like amateurs. And that's what happens. The surprise is that you can still have that in a league that doesn't want it, that has legislated defense out. And if this happens a couple more times, they'll come up with new rules because they don't want this. The league doesn't want it. They want 48-38 if they can get that. So, that's not what they want, is a defense dominating a golden boy quarterback. So we'll see how long this is sustainable. But this is what happens whenever great defense is allowed to, sort of assemble and rule the day. This is the result.
Michael Wilbon joining us here in Waddle and Silvy Meller in for Silvy today. What'd you think of Tom Brady on the broadcast on the Super Bowl, Mike?
I like Brady. I really like listening to him. I know that there are people out there taking shots at him all the time, and I don't really care to hear that. I like listening to Tom Brady. Tom Brady, I get that Tom Brady never said anything worth remembering his entire playing career. I get that. It was, I'm sure, mostly intentional, given who he played for, the organization he played with, the fact that you'd rather just stay out of it when you've got that kind of organization that really wants to suppress expression. And so maybe that was it intentionally, probably was. Troy Aikman was like that to an extent for different reasons with the Cowboys. And Troy Aikman's my favorite person to listen to on Sunday afternoons. But I love listening to Brady and what he brings. I don't know what people expect of him. He's not going to be Charles Barkley. That's not his personality, as close as those two may have become. I love listening to Brady.
Mike, when you were watching the game, did it inspire any Bears thoughts? Like, hey, the Bears need to build their team like the Eagles? Or what? Did you connect any dots between what you were watching on Sunday with your favorite football team?
No, I know. I mean, the Bears teams that I love were built like the Eagles on defense, power running, just power football. The Bears teams that I really, really, really love, and that's not going to be the case. I mean, that's going forward. That's not going to be it. I tell you what, I'd like to connect. If our front office can do what the Eagles front office has done, and draft like that, I just wrote down some of the. We just did a segment on PTI for SportsCenter, I was looking at the draft picks the Eagles have made.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be on offense where you draft Devontae Smith. It can be trading for A.J. Brown. It can be signing Saquon Barkley. It can be Jalen Carter and all these guys that Howie Roseman has drafted. Just build a team like that. That's the only, you can build, and mostly through the draft. You can fill in some gaps and take advantage of other teams' stupidity with signs and with signings and trades. But the draft, man, that's the lifeblood of any great team. Just about. Maybe the old Raiders did it differently. But the teams that have won consistently and been built for a run of success, meaning just challenging and contending, seriously contending. That's what I hope the Bears do, and the rock solid foundation of that is drafting.
Do you feel any differently about Jalen Hurts after watching him play in this postseason, and even going back to a couple of years ago and how he played against the Super Bowl against the Chiefs then?
No, he's a good quarterback. Is he going to be? Are we going to have GOAT discussions? No,
no.
But we shouldn't be having GOAT discussions about 9 out of 10 quarterbacks, or 15 out of 16. There should be no GOAT discussions. There shouldn't even be GOAT discussions yet about Mahomes. Mm-hmm. I mean, relative to the time that you ought to have to prove yourself to be involved in a GOAT discussion. So, Hurts is fine. He's fine. I'd be if he was the quarterback of my franchise and I could play that kind of power football, I'd be thrilled. Is he a quarterback that I would now give up everybody to get? No. But I'd be pretty damn happy if I had him as my starter at whatever he is now, 27, 28 years old.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of the Bears, Mike, I think we spoke to you before last Thursday when we found out that Virginia McCaskey had passed.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you have, had several occasions to meet with her and talk with her, I would assume. What are your thoughts on just this organization and how meaningful it was to her, and then whether or not you think that anything will be done differently with this organization going forward now that she has passed?
Well, I think what was going to happen differently was already set and put in place. And we'll see if they can make it happen differently. And no, I was in the company once on a Sunday game day of Mrs. McCaskey, and that was a while ago. And just, the cool thing to me was that she was the direct link to the founding father of the NFL. When you see on the sleeve, I remember, when he was 4 or 5 years old and we were going to a Bears game at Soldier Field, and I was explaining to Matthew who, GSH was, and what that meant. And he's met George, several times, George McCaskey several times, and George has given him a football once that was a signed football, and we've seen him on game day and gotten to interact, and it's just different. It's different from most other sports. It's different from sort of corporate situations where people get into sport to, run it for a different reason, to own it for a different reason, and so that's the sort of link to a traditional past that you don't often see anymore. And I just hope that, relatively soon, in her very recent memory, like now, that the Bears can do something to honor her in that way. I hope that can happen.
102 years. That's a life well lived, is it not?
Well, and to
that's what they call a great run.
Yes, a great run, Mike. Amen.
We should all be so lucky, right? And I think something interesting, too, that maybe some of our younger listeners don't realize is that she lived till she was 102, but she lived an entire life, 63 years before she actually inherited the team. So she to your point, Mike, about just like the roots that she grew up with and observing what this team was, she had probably a completely different outlook to owning this franchise than what we see from owners nowadays who are buying these multi-billion-dollar entities. It was a family-run business, and she had a completely different perspective. She was a 63-year-old who raised a family and had grandchildren before she even took over as the matriarch of the family.
Absolutely. If I could just sit with her now and talk about her remembrances, I'd like to find out how far she goes back clearly in her mind, before she passed. How just what year, what era are we talking about when she was going to Wrigley Field, to watch her father, coach the team? How far back in her mind could she go? And that's for further than any Bear fan alive, ever, just about. So and that's something that now people don't have any appreciation of history as a culture. And it's sad to me. And that's why I'd like to be able to have that discussion with her if I could.
Let's segue to the NBA and the trade that was made last week. How do you believe Luka will fare in Los Angeles?
I think he'll fare like all the other guys, famous players who've been traded there and who all won. Wilt wound up having, a couple of really difficult losses in the playoffs to Bill Russell. A Game 7 in Los Angeles, one of them. But he won, ultimately, and was on the long end of a 33-game win streak, which is the best winning streak in North American sports history. And obviously, the other players who were traded there, Kareem won multiple times. Shaq won multiple times. Pau Gasol won multiple times. LeBron James has won once and may get multiple out of it now with Luka. The guys who were traded there, and that's what the Lakers do. That's their brand. They're not drafting. They're not going about it the way I just talked about most franchises needing to do it. That's what the Lakers do. That's in Southern California, where they're not going to sit still for a rebuild or the process. So it's interesting. It's fascinating to me that the Lakers could have Luka dropping their laps like this. And I want to see what happens now and going forward. I don't think they can do much this year just because they don't have any defense. They'd be great in the 6-6 and under league, but that ain't what the NBA is. So I'm interested to see, what happens this postseason. They can still go out there. You want to play Luka and LeBron James in a 7-game series? No, you don't. No, you don't want to do that. And so I'm interested to see what happens. Like even against Houston or Memphis, younger teams that have more and that do have size and that do have defense, I don't know that you want to play Luka and LeBron in a 7-game series. They could just take advantage of you, their own playoff experience and savvy and know-how and being able to control the game. And I want to see what do they do around the team going forward? What bigs, what defensive players can they and will they get? Like soon. How long does LeBron stay? There's a lot of great questions surrounding that tandem right now, but it's fascinating to have that. And that's what the NBA is built around. Star power, star attraction. That's what people are fascinated with. That's not the calling card of the NFL or even Major League Baseball, where it sometimes happens, or even the NHL. That's the calling card of the NBA, and that's why it's more fascinating when it happens in that league.
That's the thing. My takeaway last night watching Luka make his debut for the Lakers yesterday, Michael Wilbon, was watching LeBron look a little reinvigorated as a 40-year-old. I'm wondering, all right, sure, I certainly expect LeBron to play next year for sure now, but how much longer do you think the trade of Luka to the Lakers maybe extends LeBron's career because he sees the possibility of maybe another championship in LeBron's future?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think this postseason will help determine that to a degree. Mm-hmm. The West is so loaded. Could they finish in 6th and get swept out by a third-place team? If that third-place team is, say, Denver, yeah, that could happen. And then LeBron can say, you know what, maybe I'll do a ceremonial year, and that's enough. Maybe. Suppose they get to the Western Conference Finals. Even if they lost to, say, OKC. And that does invigorate. I'm looking at Golden State with the same questions. Like, what does this mean for Steph Curry and Draymond Green to have Jimmy Butler?
Yeah.
And how sustainable is that? What do they need to add, and can they add it quickly? Maybe they don't need to add it. Like, so if I think that LeBron and Luka could take somebody's lunch money among the younger players and younger teams, why wouldn't the Warriors be able to do that too? And they could this year. Do I think that the Warriors have enough to sustain that to win a championship? No. But, man, it could be fun watching how they get there. So it'd be fun to watch. And you can see it with Steph Curry and Draymond. They're reinvigorated. They're not quite as old as LeBron, but Steph is, 36? It's not like, he's way off from that. So, seeing how this is going to manifest itself is a really fascinating chapter now in the NBA.
Was this the right trade for the Warriors, Mike? They're tied with Sacramento. They're the bottom of it. They're the 10 seed right now.
It's the one they could make. I don't know what. So who else? Like Kevin Durant. Okay, if Durant didn't want to do that, okay. I thought. I mean, either one of those seems to me to be the right one. I think Jimmy has a chip on his shoulder to some degree. And I don't know, Kevin Durant, as great as he is, and I'm going to see him tonight in person here in Arizona against Memphis, he just seems to be sort of passive right now and content to score a bunch of points. And I don't know, some people describe that as empty calories. It does sort of seem like that. Like he can score 35 and they can lose and get swept in a series. So what? I want to see if playoff Jimmy has a chance to emerge, in this next few months, in these next few weeks. The season, remember, by the time we come out of the All-Star game on the other side next week, there's going to be fewer than 30 games remaining in the regular season. So it's a sprint. You're in a bell lap. And I think that what Jimmy Butler brings to the Warriors, if the three of them can stay healthy, with, Looney playing as big as he can play if he's healthy, and he's not been out there for a month. He's been like Luka. He's been out forever. But Kuminga, who can be a 20-point scorer if they need to. And Podziemski, they got some pieces. And Gary Payton Jr., they got pieces. They got guys who were out there and won a championship 2 years ago, 2.5. So I don't know. Maybe the Warriors are as interesting to watch as the Lakers the rest of the way.
Yeah, you may not get playoff Jimmy. They may not make it. They can't finish
They can't be 11th or 12th.
Right.
They got to be better than that. And I know today, I think they're in 10th. Steve Kerr mentioned, Tommy, that's a great point, them finishing in 6th. And I think Steve probably said that out loud, knowing that, okay, we got to put a tangible challenge short term in front of this group. Because we got 10th is minimum daily required.
Mike, you know this, but our listeners probably don't. The difference between the Clippers at 6 and the Warriors at 10 is just 2.5 games.
2 games.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Warriors, I don't think that, Simmons is going to really help them in any notable way. Maybe he will. But, you got, the distance between, 6th and 12th is nothing in the Western Conference. And any of those teams, the only team that's been consistently great all season has been OKC. So, what are we going to get now?